All right, guys, this is your article for Wednesday, January the 13th, the reading assignment. All right, directions. Number 1, read the article on slides 2 through 4. There's an audio link attached for you at the top of slide 2 if you would like to listen to it instead. And this is what I'm working on right now, guys. Number 2, on slide 5, please complete the questions that are given. You may select your multiple choice answer by inserting a shape to circle the answer. If you do not want to create your own shapes to answer the questions, shapes have been provided for you on the slides, and I'll show you this at the end. Remember to use the magnifying glass at the top to zoom in if needed. Have a great day. All right, this article is called The Holocaust, Part 2, The Final Solution. And if you remember, hopefully you did do last Wednesday, the assignment. It was Part 1, The Rise of Hitler. This one is Part 2, The Final Solution. And here you see a picture, and it says a doctor stands at the center with Holocaust survivors at the entrance to the newly liberated Auschwitz concentration camp in 1945. Okay, so there, right there, I believe is the doctor, but these are the prisoners that have been freed. And the gate that's up over that, we'll talk about more later. In German, it says Arbeit macht frei, and it means work makes you free, and we'll talk about why that's important later. But it says that this is the second in a two-part series. Adolf Hitler was the leader of the Nazi Governmental Party. He ruled Germany from 1933 to 1945. Hitler wanted to take over Europe and the rest of the world. In 1940, the German army expanded Hitler's control over Europe. Nazi soldiers took over Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. Beginning in 1941, Jews from all over the continent were sent to Poland. They were forced to live in restricted sections called ghettos. On July 31st, 1941, one of Hitler's top commanders wrote of the need for a final solution to the Jewish question. The Nazi leaders came up with a plan to kill the Jewish people. Beginning in late 1941, all Jews were forced to wear a yellow star. This made them open targets. Tens of thousands of Jews were soon sent to the Polish ghettos. Around the same time, the Nazis were testing mass killing tactics. At the Auschwitz concentration camp, a prison camp where people were forced to work, Nazis killed 500 prisoners using poison gas. This was a disturbing sign of the coming Holocaust. The Nazis would use these and other ways to kill 6 million Jews. Germans send Jews to concentration camps. In late 1941, the Germans began sending people from the ghettos in Poland to the concentration camps. The Nazis' mass killings would take place at these camps. From 1942 to 1945, Jews were captured all over Europe and taken to concentration camps. Hundreds of camps were built in Germany and the countries it occupied. The Nazis tried to hide what happened at the camps, but the size and scale of the camps and the number of killings that took place made this impossible. Eyewitnesses brought reports of Nazi atrocities to the Allied nations. Atrocities means terrible things. These countries were fighting Germany in World War II. That's what you call the Allies. Those are the countries that were fighting against Germany in World War II. They included Britain, France, the United States, and many other countries. After the war, Allied governments were criticized for not doing more to stop the killings. This lack of action was likely due to a focus on winning the war, but it was also due to shock and denial. Some people refused to believe that such atrocities could be happening on such a huge scale. At Auschwitz alone, more than 2 million people were murdered. The killing continued until the end of the war. In 1944, as many as 12,000 Jews were killed every day. Germany loses the war. By the spring of 1945, German leadership was falling apart. Several Nazi leaders wanted to distance themselves from Hitler and take power. As the war came to a close, Hitler moved into an underground bunker. He killed himself on April 30th, 1945. Germany's official surrender in World War II came almost a week later, on May 8th, 1945. German forces had begun emptying many of the death camps in the fall of 1944. They forced prisoners to march away from the advancing Allied armies. These death marches killed some 250,000 to 375,000 people. Other camps were still occupied when the Allied forces arrived. One of these was Auschwitz. The Italian Jewish writer Primo Levi described life in the camp the day before Allied troops arrived in January 1945. "We lay in a world of death and phantoms," Levi wrote. "The last trace of civilization had vanished around and inside us." Life was difficult for survivors of the Holocaust. The wounds of the Holocaust were slow to heal. People who survived the camps found it nearly impossible to return home. In many cases, they had lost their families and had been denounced by their non-Jewish neighbors. That means their non-Jewish neighbors just ignored the fact that they existed. As a result, the late 1940s saw a great number of refugees moving across Europe. There was pressure on the Allied nations to make a homeland for Jewish people who survived the Holocaust. This eventually led to the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. In the years after the war, Germans struggled with the bitter legacy of the Holocaust. Survivors and the families of victims fought to be repaid for the property stolen from them by the Nazis. In 1953, the German government began to make these payments. This was a way of admitting guilt for the atrocities and crimes committed during the Nazi rule. It would be interesting to look up what that was like for the people to get that payment. And guys, here's your, just won't let me show it. I'll show it in a minute. Quiz. Number 1, what was the purpose of the introduction, paragraphs 1 through 4? A, to give background on Hitler's actions leading up to the Holocaust. B, to describe how Hitler affected countries outside of Germany. C, to give background on how Hitler became leader of the Nazi Party. Or D, to describe daily life for Jewish people before the Holocaust. Number 2, read the section, Germans sent Jews to concentration camps. Which sentence suggests that the Nazis knew that what they were doing was wrong? Was it A, the Nazis' mass killings would take place at these camps? B, the Nazis tried to hide what happened at the camps? C, after the war, Allied governments were criticized for not doing more to stop the killings? D, some people refused to believe that such atrocities could be happening on such a huge scale. Number 3, based on the article, which of the following is true? A, there were no clues to alert the outside world to the terrible things happening in Germany. B, Hitler had the full support of other Nazi leaders until the end of the war, World War II. C, the government of Germany has never admitted guilt for what happened in the Holocaust. D, survivors of the Holocaust suffered in both physical and emotional wounds. Number 4, which answer choice best describes the structure of the article? A, list order. B, time order. C, cause and effect. Or D, compare and contrast. All right, I'm going to go up and I'm going to try to zoom this out a little bit. And this is your drag and drop and how you can answer. You can either go up and create your own shapes up here and add shapes and circle the answer choices, or Miss Bray has created where you can click on the shape and drag it and drop it over the letter that you choose as your correct answer. So that's how you do that. And then you submit the article.